What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Doctor Who Series 12 review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Series 12, Episode 8, The Haunting of Villa Diodati. This is kind of the setup for the finale. I mean, from what I've heard, well, from what Wikipedia says anyway, I mean, not that Wikipedia is the most reliable source, but that originally said that episodes 9 and 10 was the two-part finale. However, now that we've seen episode 8, this is almost kind of like, it's a build-up to the finale. It's got the finale, or at least one of the finale monsters in it. By the way, spoilers for this. There are spoilers, as there always are. But, yeah, a villain in this is in this story, and I mean basically wins at the end of this episode, which is going to lead into the finale. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I wasn't quite expecting to kind of in a way get a 3-part finale, but yeah, The Haunting of Villa Diodati. Let's get started with the cast. So Jodie Whittaker as the 13th Doctor. Finally, I can say it. I loved her in this episode. I really did. I haven't really loved the 13th Doctor at all so far. I've had moments where I think she's really good, and I've now and again I get moments of, yeah, she is the Doctor, but still haven't really had that definitive moment, whereas here, I think I did. And generally throughout the whole episode, I enjoyed her a lot. She had some silly little moments here and there, but I felt like they were fine, they worked okay. She honestly felt a lot like the 10th Doctor, David Tennant's Doctor in this one, more so than usual. I mean, now and again, I think if you're going to compare her to any Doctor, she probably is going to, you would compare her to the 10th Doctor the most, but in this episode especially, she has a lot of 10th Doctor sort of things that she does, with kind of how she, like, you know, when she licks the skeleton after it's like disintegrated. That's a very 10th Doctor-y thing, you know, going up to something, licking it. That was always a very 10th Doctor thing. Just kind of the feel of her and just how she acts and everything feels very 10th Doctor, which I do like because, I mean, the 10th Doctor is my favourite Doctor. At the same time, it's also kind of like, oh, she's not being that original, but yeah, because I like the 10th Doctor so much, it doesn't bother me too much because I'm like, yeah, I like this, so get more of that. I'm happy with it. And generally just, yes, she has some of those silly moments, but they work. There's enough, there's not too many of them, and they're at times where I think it works better when things do get more serious and more life-threatening. She goes serious, and she goes really serious in this one. Like when she kind of snaps at the companions, mainly Ryan, when, you know, she's figuring out what to do. When Shelley, Percy Shelley, has got the what's it called, the Cyberman inside him, and she has to decide what to do. Does she basically kill him, stopping the Cyberman from getting the Cyberman, or does she save him, giving the Cyberman the Cyberman, which could end up in a much worse off situation? And you know, Graham is kind of like, let's just, you know, kill one person, we're going to save millions, but that's not how the Doctor rolls. She can find a way around it, you know, eventually. And I love that moment where she kind of snaps at Ryan and the companions, and it's honestly her best moment. She's finally had a moment. She's finally had like a definitive moment for me, and you know, a decent speech as well in that moment. And just generally throughout the whole episode, this is the most I've enjoyed Jodie's Doctor so far. I am so happy about that because, you know, the last 2 episodes, I felt like she's been going downhill a little bit. This episode, she brought it right back up to the top, and I loved her. As for the companions, to be honest, there's not a whole lot to say with the companions this week. Bradley Walsh as Graham O'Brien, he's good. He has some funny little moments like he always does, but doesn't do a whole lot. I feel like all the companions in this one are a little bit underused, but kind of have enough. They kind of just have enough, they just about scrape by, so I'm not really going to say much. Tosin Cole as Ryan Sinclair, same sort of thing going on. I thought he had some pretty decent moments in this, like when he was talking with the Doctor at the end, so I think he's a little bit better in this one than he has been, you know, since the start, really. And then Mandip Gill as Yasmin Khan, once again, doesn't have a whole lot to do, but, you know, she just kind of scrapes by, and is good with what she's got. Alright, so the good and the bad, starting off with the good. The Doctor accidentally being rude. I love that moment at the start of the episode where, I can't exactly remember, I haven't actually, it's been like 2 or 3 days, I think 2 days since I watched the episode, and I've just written down the Doctor being rude. I can't exactly remember what that moment was, but it was kind of towards the start of the episode. She said something a little bit rude to one of the people, and just, that was a very David Tennant thing as well. He kind of says something, doesn't really understand what he's saying, and you know, it's just, she does that here as well, and I just thought that was a funny moment, even though I can't think of it off the top of my head now, but it'll come back to me. The Doctor licking the skeleton hand, like I said before, very David Tennant 10th Doctor thing, very, very much indeed. And I just thought that was funny, the way people looked at her and everything. It just reminded me, it just brought me back to the Tennant era, and that's something that I'm always going to be happy for. Everyone's perception of the house is being changed. Now, I was a bit kind of skeptical on what they were doing here when, you know, they were walking around the house and they kind of kept on going around in circles. I was getting Legopolis / Castrovalva vibes, not really Legopolis. I mean, Legopolis, you had them going around the TARDIS. It kind of felt very repetitive, but it wasn't really. Castrovalva, mostly, you know, the city of Castrovalva, where they were just going round and round and round, and it was this never-ending loop. So I was a bit skeptical. I was like, what are they doing here? Are they just kind of doing the same thing again? But it turned out it was actually, it turned out that it was actually Percy Shelley, I think, that was doing it. And yeah, I thought that was pretty clever, and I quite liked that part of the episode. I thought it added a little bit to it. The Doctor telling the companions not to follow her. When she finds out that there's the lone Cyberman here, she goes after it. And she goes. No, does she go after the lone Cyberman, or does she? I think she just goes after the lone Cyberman, but in with that ends up finding Shelley. And yeah, because she knows at this point that things are going to be dangerous, so she tells the companions not to follow her. And just generally, I thought the presence of her in that scene and just the way it was acted and the way it was said, it just felt very Doctor-y, so I liked that moment. A Cyberman that hasn't been fully converted. Now, we only got one Cyberman in this episode, the lone Cyberman, which we've, had teased before. Captain Jack brought it up in Fugitive of the Jadoon. Don't give it what it wants, which, spoilers, she ends up giving it what it wants. But yeah, I really liked this Cyberman design. It's basically the kind of Nightmare in Silver Cybermen, the ones we've seen since Nightmare in Silver, which I'm not really a big fan of, to be honest, but it's kind of those, but because this one's kind of rusty and a bit battered and not complete, really, it looks a lot better, and there have been, adjustments to mainly, I think, to the helmet, and, I mean, of course, we haven't seen a full one yet, because this one was literally, he didn't have, like, a whole arm covered up. Half his face was, actually a human face. But just generally, looking at this Cyberman, I really like this design. Honestly, this is such a cool design. My main issue with the last Cybermen, the Nightmare in Silver ones, was that they kind of looked a bit too action figure, Iron Man, really sleek, and I just didn't really like the look of them. I wasn't the biggest fan of the sound of them, and yeah, just generally really didn't like what they did with them in Nightmare and Silver, making them fly, making them go really quick. It just completely took away the lumbering feel of a Cyberman. This has brought that back for me. I love this, but this Cyberman acts very different. And I think I do. Have I written this down? I don't think I have. But this is kind of in with this, I suppose. How this lone Cyberman, he hasn't been fully converted. His inhibitor hasn't been turned on. He still has emotions, but he's still ruthless. He wants to kill everyone. He wants to make the Cyberman again. He's like the last Cyberman, and the whole reason he wants to get this Siberian thing is to rebuild the Cybermen. But his inhibitor's not on. This is a Cyberman that has emotions, and I think that's really interesting. I've heard a couple of people saying, oh, it's a Cyberman with emotions. Cybermen aren't supposed to have emotions. Yes, but if you watch the story and you listen, it tells you that the inhibitor hasn't been turned on. Now, why this guy is an absolute psychopath, is a half-converted Cyberman and still wants to kill everyone, we don't really know that yet. But I just love the feel of it, because having an emotional Cyberman, for me, is really interesting, and it's in this context, it's really interesting. I love the moment where, I think it's Mary Shelley is mentioning about, don't you have kids? And he says, yes, I do have kids. And for a minute, you're like, oh, I think maybe he's forming an emotional attachment here. He's remembering his kids. Maybe he's going to turn good. And then he just snaps and he's like, I slit their throats when they rejoined the resistance or something. And that moment was absolutely amazing. And whoever was playing the Cyberman acted perfectly. Yeah, just brilliant stuff with this Cyberman. I loved it so much. The Doctor telling everyone that if Shelley dies, the world will be changed. Yep, talking about that thing before. Basically, Percy Shelley, he's a he's a person in history. He's a famous person in history. And yeah, if he dies, the world will be changed. And she's trying to tell, like, Ryan, if he dies, you probably wouldn't be alive today. You won't be alive if he dies. So this has got to happen. We've just got to go with this and roll with it, basically. And that's just a great moment. Shelley having the Siberian inside him was just a cool concept, a little bit weird, but a pretty cool concept. And then when the Doctor kind of got the Siberian, I would have liked there to be a bit more of a, you know, a bit more happened to the Doctor when she got the Siberian. She only had it for a short period of time, but when she did get it, I would have liked something to kind of happen to her. She kind of just takes it and is just, yeah, she doesn't really do anything. She just kind of takes it and is like, oh, I've got it now. And then eventually is like, oh, well, I've got to give it back to the Cyberman. So yeah, I would have liked some more stuff to happen there. But yeah, generally that stuff I all liked. And then finally, the Doctor having to give the lone Cyberman what it wants. Kind of saw it coming, but yeah, especially once the Cyberman, I knew the Cyberman was in this story. I kind of figured the Cyberman's gonna get what it wants here. But yeah, I thought that final scene was just, the emotions in the air were amazing. And you know what? I love a Doctor Who story where at the end of the episode, even though it's technically a 2-part/3-parter, but at the end of the episode, the Doctor's lost. The Cyberman's teleported off into the future or wherever to repopulate the Cybermen, to make the Cybermen again. And yeah, the Doctor's just stuck there with the companions, and she's got to go fight it and do what she needs to do. And I just think it's a really cool way to end a story when it's ending on such a low point for the Doctor. It's really interesting. So on to the bad. Don't really have anything to talk about here. I mean, like I just mentioned before, maybe the Doctor could have kind of reacted a bit more to having the Siberian inside of her. That would have been nice, instead of just kind of shaking it off and it just happening. The only other thing I really wrote down was the ghosts Graham saw weren't really explained. Now at the end of the story, Graham brought up, well, I saw these 2 ghosts. What were they? And the Doctor's just like, maybe they were just ghosts. But we didn't really have that explained. Now we may get that explained. We may get it explained. Somehow, I don't think we will, but we might. If we don't, I'm still not too bothered. I mean, I don't really understand where they would have come from if we don't get them explained. But at the same time, it's like, oh, it's a nice little mystery there. But yeah, I'm guessing the skeleton, that kind of wasn't really explained either, but I'm guessing that was something to do with the Siberian. I mean, we figured out that, and I really liked how we found out that, you know, when that vase got thrown across the room and smashed, and when we saw like a ghostly figure, I think Graham or Yaz or someone saw it, when we saw them, that was actually Percy because he was invisible. Yeah, there's a couple of nitpicks, but generally really, really good stuff. So a rating for The Haunting of Villa Diodati. Right now, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10, but honestly, depending on, you know, where this series ends, because it is technically part of a 3-parter from what I can tell, the start of a 3-parter setting things up, depending on how the rest of this goes, I honestly think this could go up to a 9.5, maybe a 10, maybe a 10. I'm honestly thinking it probably just going to get to a 9.5 because of a couple of nitpicks, but depending on what things are resolved and stuff like that, it could get to a 9.5, maybe a 10 at a push. But yeah, a 9 out of 10 for now is what I'm giving it, but I think it is currently my favourite of Jodie's stories. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe. Go into the description. Follow me on Twitter, that would be awesome. And I'll see you guys in the next video.